Hi everyone, in this video we're going to review carbohydrates as a macromolecule, and from a functional perspective, carbohydrates are excellent sources of energy and can perform structural duties for the cell. So when we think of macromolecules, oftentimes what comes to mind is nutrition, and that's for good reason. These macromolecules, carbohydrates, proteins, make up the food that we eat. Fats, which are not technically macromolecules, also play a large role in the foods that we eat. So today we'll be talking about carbohydrates. So that is found in breads and other grains. And when we look at monosaccharides, the monomer of the category of carbohydrates, there's a lot of diversity in this molecule as well. So monosaccharides can be categorized in a lot of different ways. Here we see the difference between aldose sugars and ketose sugars. For aldose sugars, the carbonyl group is at the end of the molecule, whereas for ketose sugars, the carbonyl group is in the middle. That's just for categorization purposes for my class. I don't really test you on that, so it's just an observation about the ways that these monosaccharides can differ. In addition, you can categorize monosaccharides based on the number of carbons in the linear chain. So monosaccharides that are made up of 3 carbons are called triose sugars. If you have 5, you're called pentose. If you have 6, you're called hexose. So it's just another way to categorize this category of molecules because there are so many different examples. Bringing together 2 monosaccharides, as you can see in this case with glucose and fructose. Dehydration reactions can bring together these monosaccharides. So as with other molecules that are joining together monomers, a hydroxyl group and a hydrogen can come together and create a water molecule to make, in this case, a disaccharide. So the bringing together of glucose and fructose results in a sucrose disaccharide, and you can see that glycosidic bond here. Now, you're not responsible for memorizing the many different monosaccharides or disaccharides that we discuss as examples in this class, with the exception of glucose. I would like you to know glucose as an example of a monosaccharide. But likewise, there's many different types of disaccharides that are created by joining together different monosaccharides. Here you can see maltose, which is a grain disaccharide, lactose, a sugar found in milk, and sucrose, we mentioned before, table sugar. After joining together many monosaccharides, we can see the polysaccharide. So this image shows an example of a polysaccharide whose purpose is to store energy inside of plants. So amylose and amylopectin are examples of starches. Starches are long chains of monosaccharide glucose. And here, amylose and amylopectin differ by being either unbranched or branched. So amylose is unbranched, amylopectin is branched, and basically what these polysaccharides represent are stored energy in plants. So individual glucose monomers can be hydrolyzed or undergo hydrolysis from the long chain and be used for an active energy source. So we see this with plants like potato plants, and when we think about a potato, that is essentially a big ball of starch. Another polysaccharide shown here is cellulose. So cellulose is not an active, is not a stored energy molecule. Instead, it is structural in nature. So the way cellulose works is you have long chains of glucose that are bound in a way such that when they interact, they form kind of like a fibrous chain. So oftentimes cellulose is referred to as fiber because it's very strong, like a fiber would be. And what's interesting is we can't digest cellulose. The bonding of the monomers together shown in alternating bonds here, actually flips the monomer. You can see, this group is up here, down here, up here. So the monomers are actually flipped, and we don't have the enzymes to break those bonds, so we can't actually use cellulose as an active energy source. Instead, it's fibrous in nature and would literally pass through animals' digestive tract. Another excellent example of a structural polysaccharide is chitin. This is just more of an interesting aside in that, all insects and shellfish, crustaceans, their exoskeleton, crabs, bees, flies, that exoskeleton is made up of chitin, which is another long chain of monosaccharides. Okay, so lots of information in there to process. I want to mention too that animals also have a stored energy similar to starch, but our version of stored chains of monosaccharides is called glycogen, and it's stored in muscle and liver, which makes a lot of sense because if you want to store energy, store it in a place where you'll need a lot of active energy. So for glycogen, you can take this polysaccharide, it can undergo hydrolysis, and those individual monosaccharides can be converted into ATP so the muscles can move basically all the time. Okay, so just a quick review of some of the examples of carbohydrates from class. I hope this helps as you're studying for your test.